So basically, it's been 10 years since I've been able to really focus on music and my own career and not be in a band or be a sideman in any particular musical project. And during this 10-year journey, I spent some time traveling the world, shooting photographs in Africa, studying with master musicians in Morocco, in the outback of Australia, playing with the Aborigines and playing with the master Ganawa musicians in Morocco with Mahmoud Guinea, Mustafa Bakbou, coming back home to the Bronx, working with DJs, working with Wayne Shorter, working with Pharoah Sanders, working with Mos Def, Jamming Lanier. It sort of stretches itself out pretty wide.
One great jazz musician that I've worked with during this period was Mr. Bobby Watson. Bobby is a fantastic jazz saxophonist. He also is a great composer, working with one of my favorite drummers of all time, Mr. Art Blakey. Suzanne Dehim is a vocalist who is beyond being a vocalist. She's a voice in the universe, has a tremendous range and a great world music knowledge, and has interesting concepts on rhythm and sound. Funk keyboard master guru, one of the originators of Moog music in funk and R&B, Mr. Bernie Worrell. Great musician, very open-minded, very influential, very original, very unique human being. Malian keyboard master Sheikh Tidiane Sect. He's a producer for Salif Keita, and he's worked with so many other great jazz musicians and African musicians in the world. And we work together in his project and on this project. David Torn is a tremendous musician, tremendous artist, a very unique human being who works a lot with sound, rhythm, ambience, loops, and samples. And David and I have this project called Splatter Cell, where basically we meet and we improvise on stage in front of people. We don't really rehearse the music. We just bring in our machines, our instruments, our indigenous instruments, and our samples and our loops. We sit down together and just create music on the spot. A lot of the concepts come from us creating sound and not dealing with time signatures or keys. And this is a very challenging thing for myself to sit down and just kind of play along with sound. However, it's a very interesting approach to music. It's a very relaxed one, and it puts me in a different head. So when I get back to playing more commercial music, my mind has expanded quite a bit. Splatter Cell really helped me to approach my music and my sound in a different way and not think about the drum set as a rhythmic instrument. Think about it as a sound texture. So David and I work together on different projects, and hopefully Splatter Cell will make its way to the record shops. Jack DeJohnette is a drummer I really respect and admire. He's been an influence on my playing. And Jack and I recorded together for the first time on his record, which was called Music of the Fifth World. Working with Jack was a great experience. We were in the studio together, and we both played the same drums and the same cymbals, and it was interesting for us to work as a rhythm section. Some tunes Jack played sort of solo drums, and some tunes he played rhythm section drums. So it was a project where Jack and I were sort of like two guitar players, where one took the lead and one took the rhythm parts in the songs. It was a very interesting approach for us. We also worked together as a duo at the Anaheim Convention Center some years ago, where we just played together as a duo concert, just two drum sets and some keyboards. So Jack's inspired me. His playing has really always been, I think, on top. Working with great musicians like Miles Davis and Charles Lloyd, and bringing out these tremendous records under the title New Directions, and his own solo projects. Jack's been very inspiring as a composer and as a drummer who takes his music beyond the typical limits of rhythm and time. He's dealing with sound. He's expanding some of the concepts of percussion. He's really a giant in that field. It's been great to work with Jack and to be around him and watch him record in the studio. It's very inspiring.
During this period, I was really able to focus on what I thought is Will Calhoun and what influences Will Calhoun. And I took the time out to just work on this project. And I handpicked certain musicians who really influenced me and have a tremendous impact in the industry, in their own artistry and their own work. Buster Williams is on bass on a few tracks. Wallace Roney's on trumpet. Stanley Jordan's on guitar. Kevin Eubanks is on guitar as well. John Benitez and Orrin Evans are my rhythm section guys that I use in my acoustic band. There's Nana Vasconcelos as guest as well on the record. And I wanted to tie in these people in sort of a concept, in a conceptual way, where I can use their ability and their talents and also introduce new sounds and dimensions to their careers as well. Tie in the DJ element, tie in the indigenous African element, tie in the jazz element, tie in the freeform element as well. And this project was fun to create, fun to do, and I was able to have the freedom to go out and put this together the best way that I see fit. My biggest influences growing up in New York City were probably Miles Davis and Jimi Hendrix. Miles' whole career covers a lot of music, and I loved every aspect of Miles' career as a jazz musician, as a musician, as a world music, and even him ending with the doo-wop record with the hip-hop cats. Miles covered a lot of ground. Jimmy just was, I think, one of the greatest guitar players to ever live, arguably. And Jimmy was always free to me in his music. He just played, I felt like he was always a free spirit, a free musician. And he sounded like that when he played his music. And I wanted to combine those two elements of freedom and world music and fearlessness and artistry and integration and create a really interesting record. And that's really what put me in the direction of making this album. This project was recorded mostly in Harmolodic Studios, which is a studio in Harlem owned by one of my favorite musicians of all time, Mr. Ornette Coleman. And ironically, I was invited to Ornette's home with virtual reality master Jaron Lanier. And Jaron played Ornette a piece of music that him and I played as a duo concert in New York City. And Ornette was very interested in what I was doing with percussion and electronics and acoustic instruments. And he recommended that I call up his son at the studio and book some studio time to cut my record. So it was an honor and a pleasure to be around Ornette, to work with him, talk with him about music, about life, what it was like growing up in Texas, all the way to his music and how he records music, to me working in his studio. And that's sort of how I got to that space. And from that point on, I invited in the rhythm section and the bands and the different guys to come in. And I cut most of my material there, and I overdubbed most of my material there.
I mixed my CD at Longview Farm Studios. The studio has a lot of history to it with Rolling Stones and Aerosmith, The Bad Brains, and so many other great artists that have played there. Living Colour recorded Staying there. This studio is owned by a young lady named Bonnie Milner, and Bonnie's a very good friend of mine, and she's doing all types of wonderful things with her recording studio, with artists, musicians of all types, with children, with the investment of music and having after-school programs as well. But Longview Farm Studios is a very important studio for me. It's a place where the Stain record really just sort of came into fruition with Living Colour.
Brazil, one of my favorite places to be on the planet. 5 years ago, I was there shooting a documentary film on maracatu, which is this rhythm that I can't describe it. I mean, it's on the CD, you'll hear it, and it's in the DVD. You'll see what it looks like. I shot this documentary because I heard this rhythm, and the hairs on the back of my neck just really stood out. I really was taken by this rhythm, so I stayed an extra 3 months, hooked up with a few people, a filmmaker, some producers. We talked about it and put this project together and went out and shot this documentary, which will be available soon at some point. But for the moment, a good amount of footage is on this CD and on this DVD. Playing maracatu introduced me to certain regions of Brazil, to Bahia, to Recife, to Olinda, places where there's a very heavy African influence in the Brazilian rhythms. Most of the rhythms from Angola are in this region. And this allowed me to do some research and connect with the roots, the rhythms of this region. So that had a major impact on my playing, whether I'm playing jazz or rock and roll. This Maracatu stuff was so indigenous and so raw. It's a beat that was only played for the queen, and it was played for the soldiers to go to war. Those were the only two reasons why you would hear this rhythm. And that inspired me as well, just to want to work with that rhythm and that sound. Some of the material on this DVD is based upon my experience, or my new experience of working with film. I was awarded this composer's grant to the Sundance Film Festival to go out as a composer and work with producers and writers in Hollywood films, and also students of the Sundance Film Camp, and score music for their films, which is a fantastic opportunity for me. And this really helped me to broaden my ideas and horizons on music, film, imagery, textures, and sound. I put in a few things in this DVD from my personal experiences. I had a photo exhibition last year in Switzerland and one here in Harlem, PCOG Galleries in Harlem. And I spent a lot of time alone out in the desert or out in the outback of Australia and different parts of the world that really interest me. And more recently, the Gnawa Festival in Morocco, in Essaouira, is the little small city that has this festival every year, where I was able to work with artists like Mahmoud Guinea and Mustafa Bakbou and play with some Gnawa masters. And I decided to stay after the festival and drive, which is a little bit crazy idea, but I rented a 4x4 and drove from Marrakesh to Merzouga and spent about 9 days out in the desert. And out in the desert, I recommend it for everyone. It was just so peaceful, beautiful, silence, and I was able to really connect with a lot of things that become buried in my daily life, like what kind of music I'd like to play and how do I feel about music and life and sound in general. And this trip allowed me to really take some fantastic photographs and think about some music. I started to study more Eastern music, more Middle Eastern music, more music from Northern Africa. Took a few lessons playing different types of flutes from Southern China, the Igbo, the Indonesian flutes, and these kind of instruments to help me think about my scales and my dynamic sound range off the drum kit and off the piano and off the bass for that matter. So these places helped me to really scope my vision on sound and music and the vision all together, to put all pieces together. And I wanted to use this album project to introduce some of my audience to my own DVD footage, my own film footage, and my scoring music to my own footage, as well as working with other filmmakers and putting together ideas and cultures and sounds and beats to connect the music with the listener. I spent a good amount of time discovering myself, music, getting away, out and traveling and trying different things. One of the introductions to finding my audience was working through the internet and setting up a web page and really dealing with people who were interested in Will Calhoun as an individual and my music and my ideas and my art, my photography, and so on, my solo projects as well. And this allowed me an opportunity to really set something up for myself. I started out really first with doing some solo CDs, solo drum projects, the first one was Housework, second one Drum Wave. Housework really deals with me as a soloist drummer, using electronics, using samples, using beats, using jungle beats, and jazz solos, brushes, different types of things that I couldn't play when I was playing rock and roll. Drum Wave really deals with the wave drum, which is an instrument that I really felt like I've sort of created my own voice on, and that's me taking this drum and changing a lot of the sounds inside of it and the EQs inside of it, and basically changing the algorithms, changing the way the sounds shape, connecting the drum to different effect pedals, and just starting to do loops and samples and get the frustrated guitar player out of my system. And Drum Wave really deals with that, and that drum and that voice has been able to really create a scene for myself where I can score films to, do solo projects with, work with the internet on, work with images in the computer, and also I use it live, whether I'm playing with Head Fake or Jungle Funk or my acoustic jazz band, Live at the Blue Note project. I'm always able to really incorporate that drum into the performance because it's so original and it's so different than anything else, so organic in my sense. And it combines a lot of indigenous sounds with technology, electricity, and effects, and whatever else is going on in your mind. You can make a really nice concept out of using this drum. So this particular period allowed me to really experiment with drums, electronics, effects, change my production ideas, and think about my sonic combinations with things. One thing I have to say, it's a little bit off the track, but I think drummers on a whole are the cavemen of the instrumental family, because we're the last artists who really don't deal with the frequencies. We don't deal with that sound that rubs. Guitar players play with bass players, horn players play with other horn players, vocalists sing in the choir, string players, and so on. But the percussionist really needs to spend time, including myself, on working with sound, working with sonics, working with frequencies. So the hi-hat frequency covers a certain space in the music. The bass drum covers a certain space in the music. The cymbals cover a certain space in the music, and we have to find out where those things work and how they fit. And the wave drum allowed me to get off the drum kit and put myself in a position where I can start to work with distortion, reverb, flanging, sampling, and looping with my own sounds and my own ideas. And it's helped me to become a better drummer on the drum kit. So when I play with a singer or another guitarist or percussionist, I can figure out the territories just by hearing who's covering what space. So the instrument was very important in my growth as a musician and as an artist and as a producer, to find out how things work in music, what rubs, what doesn't. Sometimes you want to have things be a bit abrasive, but most of the time you want to leave room for that person to create their own energy and their own sound. And the wave drum has been very instrumental in me creating my identity and knowing how to draw the line and create space in music. During most of this 10-year period, I worked with a gentleman named Doug Wimbish, who's really a phenomenal musician, phenomenal bass player. He's one of a kind, I think. He's one of the musicians I've worked the closest with during this 10-year period of me discovering different things in music. And Doug and I have worked together with the most interesting project being Head Fake. It's just two guys. It sounds like 50. It's just Doug and myself playing live with samples and loops. Jungle Funk, which we introduced Vinx to the project as well. Some of you may know about Jungle Funk and Head Fake, but that's an interesting project. And also we've worked together with Mos Def, we worked together with producing Herb Alpert. I mean, sky's the limit for us. Doug's an important part of my musical vocabulary because he has so much experience being the original bass player with the Sugar Hill Band in the studio, and also working with Tack Head and On You Sound and Annie Lennox and Mick Jagger and Seal and so many different artists. He's really covered a huge area of music. I started to study more of a jazz background, playing more African music as well. So between the two of us, we cover a lot of space. And Doug Wimbish has really been like a brother, like a partner in crime, really, with me coming up with my ideas. He influenced me to put out Drum Wave. He's the first one I played the record for, and he said, you have to put that music out, and you have to experiment with sound. You have to take the drums and beat them up and put some distortion on it, put some reverb, try to stretch it. So it was a very important relationship that we have, working together as a duo. And it's the first time I've really clicked with someone where sky is the limit when it comes to music, sound, ideas together as a rhythm section. It's just, we just play and it happens. A little bit of coaching, but for the most part, everything just sort of happens the way it is. This is a very important partner to have when you're interested in so many things as we are as musicians and we are as human beings in life. So this 10-year period was a very important period for me, rediscovering my drumming, getting back to some things that I was studying in the past with my original teacher, Horace Arnold, who was teaching me time, rhythm, mathematics of drumming, brushwork, and so on. This allowed me to really connect what I was learning before I started to play in bands to me finding my own identity as an artist and to be influenced by other musicians in the world. This CD, this DVD deals with that. It's a combination. The DVD footage, Tajine, Deep, Push, these images, these ideas are all combinations of my life in that 10-year period. Visionary ideas, musical ideas, all coming together in one package. And I think you, the listener, the viewer, whether you're just in a bar or you're hanging out or you're chilling, you're a student, you're an artist, you're not an artist, you're a financial person, what have you. This music works. I think you can play it for kids, you can play it for the jazz heads, you can play it for hip hoppers. It's really got a lot of information for a lot of people. And it's not my intention to try to address a bunch of people. It's my intention for me to really be Will Calhoun. And that's what this CD and DVD presents. It's me, it's my ideas, where I am, and how I see life, how I see music, how I hear music. That's basically what this project deals with at the moment, and there's certainly more to come. So enjoy it, and thank you very much for being a part of this experience.